Hello and welcome again to another episode of Scions of the Southland. As always, my name is Akshay Ishwaran, and joining me from the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia, is once again a man who loves the Green Bay Packers, Mr. Jake Grant. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I was just one day, instead of as always, your name being Akshay Ishwaran, it was something like, I don't know, not Akshay Ishwaran. That really throw everybody for the loop, I think.
Yeah, I we try to be predictable on this show with our format and our discussion topics, but I got to say some of the results that we will be talking about today, to segue a little bit, we're a little unpredictable, wouldn't you say?
We have quite the sampler platter up for the good people of the internet to enjoy. It was quite a week for Georgia Tech.
It was quite like a couple of days too. Like, let's be real, like the last 48 hours, because of women's basketball and men's basketball and tennis and it was, if you like your heart getting stressed and you like, really feeling it pump, you got to work out in the last 48 hours.
Dude, the lady racket jackets, they'll make you feel alive. They're not boring up there at Ken Byers, I'll tell you that.
Yes, they will certainly make you feel things, I will say. So why don't we let's get out our trusty handy dandy timer here. Why don't we put our usual 30 minutes on the clock and get started? What say you?
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks.
All right, and three, two, one, here we go. Swim is up first. The women swept Vanderbilt to, I don't think either of our surprises. And then part of the team went and swam versus Alabama along with the men's team. What happened? Do tell.
Well, they're both at home, so I think the whole women's team was there for both meets. But we had Vandy on Saturday, Bama on Friday. Bama, quite good actually, which is not the worst thing in the world to have them on the schedule. A loss to Bama, as we all know, is quite a way to prune up your schedule and your resume. And we did just that. The men and the women both took quality losses to number 16 and number 11 Bama, respectively.
hmm I see here that you have the men winning 11 events, and also they won the 1,000 meters. So, an interesting mix. I know they also posted three or four NCAA B cuts, so that's always good to have in the back pocket. What other things about this meet stood out to you?
I thought the whole premise of this meet was hilarious. Not from a haha like good team. They burnished their strength of schedule. That's awesome. I thought it was funny because not a lot of people know this. I imagine we as Georgia Tech fans know this because we love our esoteric history, especially on this podcast. But in
hmm
Bama's fight song, they don't reference Auburn, they don't reference Tennessee, they reference that school in Athens, and they reference us. And in it, they go, "Send the Yellow Jackets to a watery grave." And well, is it bad to say? I guess they did that. Like I don't feel the men's team didn't win, but 8 point loss in a swim meet is eh. Feel
It's like a 3-point loss in a conference championship game in
it,
football.
it's a moral victory, or if anything, it's nothing that'll tank your strength of schedule or your net or your RPI. Like this is just they got up, they got some good swims against a good team. The usual suspects, Pamputis, Ferraro, Unlu, got their medals. They got their B cuts. The more the merrier on that, I guess. And and yeah, I think the best takeaway from this, or the most shocking takeaway for the men, was Caleb Blishke, however you say that. If you listen to this podcast, man, let us know. I'd love to be able to say your name right. But he won the 1,000, and it's always great when we get to write about names outside of those big two or three. And on the ladies' side, they won the 4 free relay, and against a top 12 team, top 11 team. Taken for a program that has struggled to get the relay wins, and our women's team has. It's really good to see them contest these races with Florida State, with Bama, with Auburn, and take a relay or two at each meet. And I think that's, I don't know. Yeah, they got not blown out of the water, but it wasn't quite as close as maybe an optimistic man would like, but they still swam well. I don't know. It's
Again,
more than I would have seen out of last year's team. I like it.
again, quality loss.
Yes,
Quality loss.
dude. We have loaded up on these SEC teams of late, the month of January, and we took our quality losses against Auburn and Bama, and then the ladies pants Vanderbilt.
I don't know. In some circles, that gets you a bid to the Outback Bowl.
Well, we I feel like a swimming bowl would be really weird.
It might just be. I mean, I feel like the Bahamas Bowl is the spiritual swimming bowl.
The I feel like it'd have to have like a slide race or like I mean flip cup. At this point, you're just talking about a club swim meet, but yeah, no, it'd have to have something ridiculous in Mimi. But
Okay, so
somebody
what I'm hearing is that we're doing the Outback Bowl, and you're dressing up as the Bloomin' Onion.
I can't steal Ryan Nanny's bid. That's just sad. It's his thing. I'd never match up to that greatness.
Okay, so you're gonna be the other thing. The crap, I forgot what the other thing is.
I don't even know. Honestly, coconut shrimp, maybe. I don't
I
know.
think it is shrimp.
Ugh.
It's shrimp in some way. Anyway, we're gonna sidestep that and move on to track. Nicole Fegan set a bunch of records on. I think this was Saturday. She broke the Tech indoor 5K record with a 16-minute, 6-second, and 50 millisecond finish. Yes, I said that and phrased that poorly, but we're going to roll with it. This was at the Carolina Challenge meet in Columbia, hosted by South Carolina. She beat the previous record by about 7 full seconds, and her 5K time was 10 seconds faster than her personal best. All stats provided by RamblingWreck.com. Mr. Grant, please discuss.
Well, that's good. You want to see your good runners running well.
This is very insightful, by the way.
She's been the anchor of that team for a good long while. I don't know enough about how the rest of the country's been running up to this point, just because, I mean, I cover Tech and it's not on TV until we get to the ACC meet or something like that. But no, it's good to see her running well. Obviously, these are substantial drops, and I mean, my hope, and I think this is at least a little bit reasonable, is that I'd be excited to see what she can do when she tapers into a championship meet.
You're using swimming terms and concepts and matching them to track, which is very interesting way to go about it. Although I guess track is just swimming but on land.
I think these are the only, like, otherwise we don't really have track swimming like comparisons. There's nothing quite like either of the two, so they kind of have to be, at least in my head, the compatible with each other, at least for us to, shill our takes.
Fine. All right, let's move on to golf, who placed 7th in the Camp Creek Seminole Invite. I think the last couple of competitions that they've been in, we've noticed a bit of a drop off from their usual performance. So, what are we thinking? Moving forward for this program.
Well, just because of the way golf is scheduled, it's usually like a Saturday to a Monday or a Sunday to a Tuesday. So this is actually the same tournament we were talking about last week, their first of the year. And when we talked about it,
oh my God,
it was still in action, and it wasn't looking super great. I hesitate to actually say mean things because I love this team and they're wonderful and they bring me lots of joy. But this was an all ACC field, and as still the reigning ACC champions, it's tough to it's tough to see. We lost a lot, but putting two of our guys in the top 20, that's better than they looked on Sunday when we last talked about them. So I will take it. They started off in a bit of a hole. They didn't dig down any farther. um, but yeah, no, it's tough. They're still figuring things out, and they didn't have Noah Norton. I believe we talked about last week.
Hmm.
So not not the end of the world on that.
I imagine it's pretty hard to dig holes with golf clubs, but I'm no expert.
I'll uh, I'll let you try and figure that one out yourself. Is that all right?
I mean, divots aren't that big. I don't know how you'd get. I mean, you'd have to go pretty cartoony to make a pretty big divot.
Well, here's the thing. Looking at the scorecard from their last round, I think presumably their best round, but I haven't dug into the second one yet. Uh, I just happen to have this one pulled up. They only had one double bogey all day, more bogeys than we're used to, but they didn't play that. They didn't play that bad of a round, frankly. So I don't know, and they heated up as the round went on too. So I think it might just be they're young, they're new. A lot of these guys didn't get a ton of playing time last year. And to paraphrase the Bruce Hepler podcast I went to and listened to a couple of weeks ago, like when they're not playing at these invites as freshmen, when they're not starters, right? They're not like they're taking warm up shots or playing a practice round. They have to be at home playing Eastlake. There's not a lot they can do. So as it's not necessarily a trial by fire, but it's definitely a more learn on the job kind of role than
Hmm.
I think we give it credit for. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how they do this week coming up at the Southwest Invite, I believe it's called. But that's on the Golf Channel. If anybody out there listening wants to check them out, you can see them in person, and hopefully they take that next step forward.
Interesting. Interesting. Let's move on quickly now over to volleyball. I know this is a little out of place in our document, but I wanted to bring this up before we get to the meat and potatoes of the schedule here. So, volleyball did an interesting thing earlier today. They announced their spring schedule and then pulled the Instagram post that contained it. So, we're not entirely sure what's going on there, but when we were talking about this earlier before we recorded, it looked like that schedule had one game versus every team that Tech hadn't faced so far, so hadn't faced in that fall 8-game set. I think it was split 5 home, 5 away, with a home game versus Pitt. Or no, it was visiting Pitt, and then they got Syracuse and Notre Dame at home, if I remember correctly. Obviously, considering they deleted the post, it's a little subject to change, but I think our initial predictions, initial feels about that schedule were pretty good. Like it's competitive, it's all in conference. I know there's a couple of neutral sites, but this is sort of the gauntlet that you need for a team that wants to prove itself.
Yeah, I think we also talked a little bit about this before we got on the air. They kind of lucked out too, at least in the schedule that was posted. Two of those road games weren't true road games. They were playing, well, Virginia, I think, at Pitt. So I think the Pitt game might be on the road. But I mean, obviously, it might be a little more helpful to play Pitt at Virginia, given the strength of those two teams. But, Georgia Tech can play this from a position of strength, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're a good team. They have opportunities. But I think this will definitely be a more challenging road than we saw in the fall.
Mm-hmm. And remember, right now, I don't know how standings are going to be counted moving forward towards the tournament, but right now they're sitting either tied for the top or at the top of the ACC. So you want to maintain that lead, you want to maintain that grip, especially when you know that Pitt, which is a traditional power in the sport, is a little vulnerable. Um, if you remember, they took that loss to Syracuse in. And actually, I think they got swept by Syracuse in that series in the fall. So
Yeah, I think they lost twice.
yeah, so you have not necessarily a power vacuum, but there's definitely some room to take advantage of team weakness and move into that upper echelon of volleyball teams rather than sort of the mess of teams that are in the middle in the conference. So this schedule puts them on a good path to getting there.
Yeah. Out of all the years, we're finally seeing some respect for Georgia Tech volleyball. We didn't see it in 2016. We definitely didn't see it in 2019. But 2020, 2021, we're ranked going into the season in this poll. We have the meat of our schedule that is left is a very good Pitt team, a very good Notre Dame team, Louisville, always in the mix, Syracuse, who has proven themselves to be a more interesting team than we've seen in the past this year. Georgia Tech will have the schedule. Also, I did notice, actually, as I was flipping through channels before I turned this on, that there were Clemson non-con volleyball results in. So I think to take a sharp left turn, we might be a little bit preemptive on the schedule because maybe they can get, I don't want to say Kennesaw because we all know how that went. Well, we probably don't all know how that went in 2019, but it didn't go well. But, we might pick up a non-con game here or there. But if you told me that, because they used to play big games in McCamish or Alexander Memorial, if they put a UGA Georgia Tech game in McCamish some point this spring, that might be the hottest ticket of any event of the spring.
Even with the reduced capacity.
Oh, for sure. Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
Especially with the reduced capacity is what I mean.
I think I'd be camped out all day before that just to get in the building. But I don't know. We get to see them again, and they're quite fun to watch. So it's a bit of a light fall, a little bit of a sad fall in terms of sporting content here at from the Rummel seat, Georgia Tech. But we get the added bonus of getting another semester of watching volleyball. So there's
also
that.
all of these damn sports are on at the same time. We'll move on to women's tennis here in a bit. I guess this is a good place to segue, but we had women's tennis and men's tennis on at the same time, I think yesterday, and then they were quickly followed by women's basketball or men's basketball, and then we had women's basketball today. And this is, I guess, the part of the season that we love, or the part of the NCAA calendar that we really love, when all of these things are going on at the same time. We're sort of able to just stick our head in the bucket and drink straight from the, I don't know, Bob for apples. If this metaphor is working, it's really not for me. But we're drinking from the sporting fire hose early on so far this year, and I think that's like a really fun part of the year.
Dude, wait 3 weeks and we'll have baseball and softball back too.
Oh boy. Yeah, it'll be a fun semester. Even if, going to games isn't super possible, it's all on TV.
I was going to say, the crazy thing is too, for once it's not golf leading the charge in the spring, even though there's lots of options. Like women's basketball is a tournament team. Men's basketball is definitely talented enough to be a tournament team. Both of these teams could be playing into March. Baseball is one of the best teams in the conference. They're ranked in every poll in the top 20. That's 3 teams that we talked about, and that doesn't hit on women's tennis, who's now going to the ITA indoors, which we'll talk about more in a second. Men's tennis, exciting young class. Golf, it's essentially all brand new faces. Who knows what they could do? I mean,
softball, which is primed to compete in a revamped schedule or a revamped roster with some new faces on the coaching staff, like we talked about last week.
And you heard it right here, right now. I don't see there's any way, as long as they taper into ACCs and get an A cut, and so they can send all their B cuts to the NCAAs, the men's team, if everyone gets in and qualifies, will probably be a top 20, top 15 NCAA finisher in swimming.
See, I mean, it's a lot different, and we'll move on in a second. I know we're sort of gushing right now, but it, it's a lot different from one summer. I think it was like the summer of 2018 when there was just sort of a
Yeah,
malaise
yeah,
around the entire athletics program, and we even sent in a question to Todd about this, comparing the summer of or the spring of 2018 to the spring of 2019, um, where there was just a massive turnaround across the board,
yep,
and he just credited it to great coaching, great hires, better player development, and a renewed investment in the program, and we're sort of seeing the gradual fruits of that labor as we roll on here.
yep. I would agree. I mean that, and the crazy thing is about that 2018 year, it had the it had a conference championship. That the golf won conference championship. Women's tennis went to the Final Four, but like outside of that, it was just not much doing, and it's hard to feel connected to sports that are less accessible for people. Golf, in terms of, and tennis in terms of spectator and TV, is just not what it was. And they've come a really long way, especially tennis, in the Twitter and like live stream and live stats department. That, I mean, I don't know how many of our listeners do, but we can tune in now, and or at least follow casually on Twitter. And I think that casual connection is what starts a more critical, appreciation for the our non-rev sports, the tennises and the swimmings and the tracks of the world.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk more about women's tennis. Like we mentioned, oh man, today's match versus Duke for the ITA indoor kickoff was a barn burner. They dropped the doubles point. They dropped two of the doubles matches, but then and the hole got deeper after that.
I was
They
no. Before you say they dropped it, you got to frame it with Duke put their best two players on court three, traditionally the weakest of the two courts, in order to reverse stack the lineup in order to game their way to the doubles point and say, hey, maybe we have a shot on one and two, and we can definitely win three, rather than make all three, competitive question marks.
Yeah, I know you and former co-host Ethan were not happy about the gamesmanship that went on there.
No, that was, but we still won in the end. But I'll let you keep.
Yeah, let me set the
Before
scene
we
here
start.
before you spoil the ending. So Tech lost the doubles point. We went over that. They got crushed in both of those doubles matches that they lost. The first one that was on court one went unfinished at 4-3. They lost like 6-1 on court two, and then they lost like 6-2 on court three. So they more or less got destroyed in the doubles point. And then we move on to singles. And keep in mind that Duke has not stacked their singles lineup, so they're playing like first best versus first best, second best versus second best in singles. So Tech drops the first singles. Then Gia Cohen takes one of the singles matches, but then Tech, I believe, loses. What was it? Two more, one more after that?
Yeah. What was I going to say? Shoot, I completely blanked.
Anyway, I'll keep thinking. I'll keep moving. So they drop one more singles match. So what we now have is Tech versus Duke. They're at, I think it was 3-2. You need 4 points to win the match, or I don't really know what to call it. The win the day. Let's go with that. You need 4 points out of the 7 to win the day. It goes down to 3 sets on both courts 2 and 3.
Yep.
I think the Tech tennis player on court 3 was Vicky Flores,
Yes.
and then you have Ava Frostar on court 2. I probably did not pronounce that right. Uh, let us know how to pronounce it. It goes into third sets in both matches. Vicky Flores was able to wrap up hers, coming back from a first set loss. She wins the second set and then takes the third set. but it was very close. I think at one point it was,
He was also
uh,
down 4-1 or 5-1 in the third set.
yeah, she was down 4-1 and then tied it up at 4-4, then got it to 5-5, and then took the victory at, I think, 7-5 after a tiebreaker. So then it comes down to Ava in at court 2. Let's set the scene and what happened on court 2. First set, I think the Duke's tennis player had a won 6-1.
6-2.
Second 6-2, close enough. In the second set, the Duke was ahead 5-zip. You need 6 points in this case to win the set. Duke was ahead 5-zip. Frostar storms back to take the second set, and Duke has an epic meltdown in the process, and then plays an incredibly tight third set. I think at one point it went to 5. It was tied at 5-5 when we started tuning in, and we had to go find the stream for this halfway through the Bucks Packers NFC Championship game because this was way more interesting to watch.
Well, we thought we couldn't even get it.
Yeah, for a second there. And so Crossart, I don't remember what the tiebreak point was, but it's a back and forth, and then finally Crossart was able to break the Duke's player or break Duke's player's advantage and secure that last tiebreaker point, which won the match for Tech.
Yep.
It took like 3 hours of gameplay or whatever, but Tech basically clawed back from an almost unwinnable position to secure this match, and it was wonderful to watch. This is a stacked Georgia Tech women's tennis team. I don't watch a lot of tennis, so I can't comment effectively. So I will leave you to analyze here.
I think the most important thing to caveat the end of this is 4 of those players of our 7 main that see playing time in singles and doubles are freshmen, true freshmen, not freshmen who were here last year and are still freshmen by eligibility. These are girls in their still second weekend of collegiate tennis that just pulled that off against the number 6 team in the country.
Oh, and they fought. This is after playing who was it, Memphis yesterday, to almost the same position. South Carolina,
Yep.
fine. They played South Carolina to basically the same point where it came down to the final singles match, to a third set in the final singles match. It was they played back-to-back barn-burning close games, and like we said in the open, this team will really give your heart a workout.
Yeah, the Jackets against 2 top 15 teams, being about as green as any well-regarded team in the country, played 2 very games that you would expect, not immature in like the immature, but
Just
young, like
young and inexperienced. You would expect a more experienced team to know how to close these out.
And Duke didn't do that today, and we did. And South Carolina didn't do that yesterday, and we did. We looked really good, Duke.
I know our lead into this, but was poor because I'm not a good storyteller. But the fact of the matter is, Tech is ranked number 12. They beat number 6 Duke. They beat number 14 South Carolina yesterday. What this means is that they advanced to the ITA Indoor Championships, which I believe are made up of 8 teams total, and that's in 2 weeks. Just for this year, it's 8 teams. Usually it's 16. Thanks for that mention. However, they do have 4 matches coming up this week as they sort of prep and continue competing. Auburn, Kennesaw, UAB, and Georgia State. I don't have on my shot sheet here if those are all at home, but if they are, pretty nice.
Yeah, I know the state match on Tuesday and the doubleheader UAB and Kennesaw are. Let me see if I do have it pulled up. Sweet. We play Auburn at home on And I assume January 31st because it was scheduled to be either the 31st or the 5th. The 5th is the first day of ITA indoors in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So it looks like Auburn will be in town next Sunday.
Hmm, interesting. Well, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on. I think this is a chance for another special year like 2018, 2017, 2018. So I'm looking forward to more seeing more of this team.
Yeah, I love the recruiting class from Coach Harmon. It's great to see them play in person, or not in person, but live and for tech. And we're very lucky to 3 years after we had our last amazing run to be seeing a team that is essentially rebuilt and reloaded, despite a key transfer, despite basically all that team except for Kenya Jones and Victoria Flores being graduated or gone in some form or the other. Like this is the reloaded Georgia Tech women's tennis team.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm buying stock early personally. I'm throwing some really investing, buying a lot of calls in this team.
Yeah, a lot more of a quick payoff than having to wait for your calls on or my calls on women's swimming and diving to come in at some point here. But
You just should have bought GameStop stock.
didn't Reddit break that stock on Friday or Thursday?
Just casual market manipulation. It happens.
Yeah, that's how that goes, I guess.
All
All right,
right, we're gonna go into 10 minutes of stoppage time here. Let's talk about women's basketball real quick. They went undefeated the last couple games, so that's 2-0 versus Wake and Florida State. I caught most of both of these games, other than the fact that the Wake game got a little boring in the middle and I fell asleep. But when I woke up, it was an absolute boat race and clinic by Georgia Tech near the end there. But with the FSU game, that one was a little bit more interesting. That one, a lot more back and forth, a lot closer, came down to turnovers and making shots at the right time. And, things that we typically give the men's team, and we'll talk about them in a bit, men's team a little bit of grief for. But I think Tech's women's team has had the experience, has sort of the maturity at a lot of the positions to overcome those mistakes and then close that game out earlier today. I just want to mention before I let you chime in here, Sarah Bates was injured in that game earlier today versus FSU. Reports from our friends at Jackets Online mentioned that it was an ankle sprain, and she will be back for the next game. Good for her because that spill looked a little nasty.
yeah,
And she was down for a bit there.
yeah. I was going to say it took a bit to get her off the ground, and yes, congrats to Jackets Online for covering women's basketball. It's a big
Oof.
thing. We love having you in here. But no, they took care of business and throttled a Wake Forest team. It got a little closer in the end in that one than it probably could have. And I thought it was very interesting listening to if I can watch these games over the radio or in person, I try to do that.
Watching games over the radio because radio is a visual medium. Yes,
Exactly. That's why you get to see my lovely face when we do this podcast.
exactly.
But no, it was interesting listening to a different perspective on the TV, talking about how when you're playing or watching our two bigs play, Nira Hermosa and Lorella Kubai, the expectation or the wait is for when they're going to get a double-double, but it's not from, okay, they're going to get 5 baskets or however you get to 10 points. It is, they're going to lock down 10 rebounds. It's just a matter of when do they get those 10 points, right? And I think that's really interesting because you see that play out against a team that, well, compared to a Wake Forest team, is a solid Florida State team. They're ranked last year. They got some players that can really play, that can shoot, that can, box out, whatever. And Georgia Tech staked a claim on each glass, offensive and defensive,
Hmm.
and they made their presence known, right? And obviously the Wake Forest game, it was a talent mismatch, right? Georgia Tech
Hmm.
should have and did win that game, but against Florida State, that's not as much of a gimme. And what Georgia Tech did is played an aggressive brand of basketball, and much like the men's team has been able to like learn to do and be able to do, they shared the ball. They were effective from well, if Sarah Bates hadn't gone out, they might have put 5 people in double figures, and that is the mark of a team that plays together as a team well. If you have to put the team on somebody's back and have them score 40 points in order to have a prayer of winning, that's not the team I want to be a part of. I love watching this team play because they're exciting on both ends of the floor and they all can score. Everybody on the floor is a threat. We've
And
never had that before.
that's not to mean that they don't have the star power too. Like I think we saw that in the Florida State game, especially in the middle of the third quarter and close to the end of the fourth quarter. Kiera Fletcher just sort of takes the ball and goes off and does her thing, right?
Yep.
And that sort of hero ball, I think we when it comes to the men's team, and again we'll get to them,
I'm about to have
we
a
sort
different take on that.
yeah, we have like a weird, interesting take for the men's team because when they try it, sometimes like the chances of success are interesting. But when Kira Fletcher does it, more often than not, she's able to put it together and be effective and just really galvanize this team as that senior leader into producing and closing out these games. And it's happened a couple times now this season, and that's why when she was out those first 5 games, we made it such a big deal about when is she going to come back because she adds that element to this team and um, makes it a better unit as a whole.
Yep, I agree. It's clear she's a veteran, but and again on the star power thing, Loda Lahtinen, great player, can
Hmm.
put the team
Hmm.
on her back. Kira can put the team on her back. Loyal McQueen is going to be awesome.
Very good.
The rest of this year,
Very, very good.
more years, maybe 4 after that, fantastic. I have no complaints about that either.
Hmm. It'll be very interesting. I think Nelf Werner has set up that program for a lot of sustained success. Just
Yeah,
to
and
recap,
that was a hire that we didn't really know about, and I think it's at least so far with very similar parts that previous staffs had, doing all the better to recruit, all the better to make the results happen on the floor, and yeah, taking advantage of somewhat of a power vacuum in the ACC. But you know what? It's ours to take. Men's basketball can do the same thing this year. It's an exciting time to be a fan at McCamish.
all right, you segued right into it, and we are running out of stoppage time here. Let's talk some men's basketball to close it out. They beat Clemson, I think, in what was basically a boat race, but then
Yep.
lost close to Virginia. Clemson was ranked number 20. They're having they're tweeting through it right now. UVA's been doing okay. It's a weak year for the ACC, but UVA still win games. Give me your quick 1 sentence summary of this UVA game, which is definitely the more important of the two.
32 minutes of victory.
Oof.
That
That
we
hurts
played
me at
32 minutes of winning basketball. That is what we got.
that's 8 minutes. 8 minutes of basketball.
Yeah. Well, in the end, guarding Hauser was a problem. Uh, dribbling into traps and struggling to make things happen on offense was a problem. To which players reacted with, "All right, it's time to do something." And frankly, I don't blame them. Like they're going into one of the best defenses from perhaps the best defensive mind in all of basketball and feeling smothered. But it's a lot different than Brian Gregory's team putting up 28 points in 40 minutes against the same Tony Bennett
Can we
defense.
not talk about that, please?
I mean,
I'm pretty sure I was there. It was not fun.
it sucks to say that, like, well, this is better than any Tech team we've seen in recent years against this program or this coach or
But
whatever. But it's
also,
true. But it's so frustrating. If you would have told me in hindsight, hey, you're going to play Virginia super close, you're going to look like you could hang with them and handle parts of their game, and you're going to lose by 2, I'd probably been like, okay. Or to the me walking away from last year's Virginia game, I would have been like, shoot, that sounds like a great deal compared to this.
but it's just the way they got there. I think
Oh,
we've
yeah.
said this before too, right? It's the result. The end result is acceptable. It's palatable.
Wow.
But the end result is palatable. But the way that they got there is just frustrating. As a Tech fan, that's a long suffering Tech fan. I think you can call both of us now. Like, you want to see them be good, and you know that they have the tool set to do so, and you've seen them be good. They beat a ranked Clemson team for what it's worth. It's just that they couldn't put it together. They couldn't close it out. And I think that's what we mean when we say, when we're contrasting them to the women's basketball program and saying, hero ball works for Kiera Fletcher effectively with when the two teams are evenly matched, but it doesn't work as well for Michael DeVoe sometimes. And I think specifically in this game, it didn't work out sometimes for him. Um, that's sort of what we're talking about. It's that it's something there is just missing to where they have trouble closing these types of games out. I think when we were talking earlier, you said once UVA got to 4 points up, you knew it was done. It was game over.
Yeah. I mean, and I think some of that has to do with the talent differential, the pure talent differential between a Michael DeVoe and your average Virginia, whoever's guarding him, is going to be a heck of a lot closer. I don't care how many stars Michael DeVoe was, than Kiera Fletcher versus some FSU player, right?
That's fair.
I think it's stratified enough that you're playing a proven one of the best teams in the country. Tony Bennett is going to do a good job coaching his team. Any one of them. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to rely on one person to fix that. But I'm not going to harp on that. And I know Moses Wright has been getting a bunch of due love for a bunch of his successes this year. But I want to give Jordan Usher a pat on the back for what he did this week. I think
Mm-hmm.
he was the player of the week for the men's basketball team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll agree.
I
Just to finish,
I was going to say I would like to add one more thing.
go for it.
Moses wasn't goaltending. I need to get that
Uh-oh.
off my chest. People,
Uh-oh. Refereeing controversy again.
but it is what it is. If that goes one way, then who knows what it changes the rest of the game. So,
Ifs and buts, candy and nuts, etc., etc., etc.
Merry Christmas.
Just to wrap up the basketball portion, since the ref is letting us play a little bit longer than stoppage time entails, women's basketball, they are up in Miami, or down at Miami, I guess, on the 28th at 6 p.m. And then they'll host Cuse on the 2nd of February. No time release for that. Men's basketball plays Duke at home on the 26th at 9 p.m., which I feel like is a must-win game. And then they also host FSU on the 30th at 4 p.m. Women's basketball, like we said, firmly in the tournament. Actually, I don't know if we said it, but there it is. They are firmly in the tournament. Before today's game, they were projected to be a 9 seed versus 8 seed Alabama in the first round. Men's basketball was not listed on the tournament field. I still think they're on the bubble. They need all the wins that they can get, and the Mercer loss still hurts. This thing, just to sort of wrap it up, men's basketball, you can very easily see a path for them to be like a 9-2, a 10-1 team. If
Right? Yeah.
and they just are 7-4, and like, again, frustrating, but you know that they can put it together. Like, you see the little pieces, and you have faith that they can put it together. We have a little faith that they can put it together at the end of the way.
Yeah, I will add one thing. The men have about 10 or 11 games left on the schedule. I did the counting last night. I forget what it was. But they're 7-4 now. They could go 9-2 over the last 11 games on the schedule, unless they slot some back in that were canceled or whatnot. But there is a path for this team to beat Duke twice this year, to beat Notre Dame, to beat Syracuse, to
Be careful about calling those shots before
I don't want
before
to
they
promise the
happen.
world, but these are the ACC is anybody's ball game this year. That last
Hmm.
night's results shouldn't turn anybody off from the brand of basketball this team is playing. They're experienced. They want to win. It's gonna I hold out the hope. Keep the faith. I think we can get a bye again this year, and who knows what happens after that.
Hmm. All right, Mr. Grant, that about wraps it up for today. Any last points before we move on, or end for the day?
Have a nice last week of January. It's very weird that it's already the end of January.
Very, very weird, and yet also, it's been a long last year in general, so maybe it's welcome.
Yeah, well, if you've gotten the vaccine out there, congrats. If not, hopefully you get it soon, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, we will see you again next week, listeners. Thank you for listening. Talk to you soon.